Thank you, everybody, for joining us today for our virtual event, Using Your Secret Sauce to Grow Your Business, with our presenters, Susanne Salerno and Sarah Ginand. It's going to be a really good presentation, but before we get started, I want to thank our small business sponsors, Needham Bank and CMIT Solutions, for making programming like this possible for us to do. So I'll pass it over to you guys to present. Thank you for presenting for us.
Oh, absolutely. We are excited to be here today. I'm one half of the dynamic duo that will be presenting today. That's a lot of big shoes to fill there, Susanne, sorry. But my name is Sarah Ginand, and we are excited to talk a little bit about how to use your secret sauce, and we'll talk a little bit more about what that really means to grow your business. Today, I am a marketing strategist, and I run my own business. I've been doing it for about 8 years after a corporate career, and I love what I do. I love helping businesses figure out how to market themselves most effectively to their target market using some strategy and some core elements. If you can define those up front, it's so much more effective, I think. So we are excited to be talking about this today. Susanne and I actually met at a chamber event and are so excited to be able to actually present together today. And now we're really good friends as well. So Susanne, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Maxim and Tracy. As Sarah said, we're thrilled to be here today. I'm Susanne Salerno. I have spent my career working both across sectors, which means I've worked both in the private sector and the nonprofit sector. And now I have a social impact consulting firm where I help businesses and organizations come together and really think about what's the strategy for your community engagement. How are you going to come together, and it's both your business profit and purpose, and think about also doing good well at the same time. And as Sarah said, we've met at the chamber event, so we really believe in the power of the chamber membership, and I am appreciative of her as my marketing advisor, friend, and webinar partner today.
All right, which is great. So as Maxim mentioned at the very beginning, you may not have heard, but please feel free to put any thoughts, questions in the chat. We'll try to have some blocks where we'll stop and answer some questions if you have any. And we may ask you for a little feedback too, because I'd rather, it's 9:30 in the morning. Let's get to it and get some feedback from folks as we go along. What we would love to hear, and please put this in the chat, if there's something very specific you'd like to hear today. You may just want to hear more about secret sauce and how can I utilize it? What does that mean? But if there's something specific you'd like to hear, put that in the chat as well. We'd love to hear about that. All right, yeah. So Susanne, anything else you want to add?
And if you're wondering, if anyone's guessing, where is this beach as we head into summer? This is just off Lighthouse Beach in Chatham, Massachusetts, on a quiet walk one morning.
It's a good one.
Get us started.
That's great.
Let me see if we have anything in the chat. Nothing yet.
Okay, that is great. Well, why don't we'll jump on in. And what we thought we'd start off today with is thinking a little bit about what trends we've seen for 2023, some of which are almost timeless, but we thought we'd kind of give you from my marketing perspective, and then Susanne from a community impact perspective, what we're seeing in the market as sort of the lay of the land. So in 2023, competition, nothing new. Many of you have seen tons of competition, but it's a competitive market out there right now. It's crowded, competitive, with many companies and organizations are sort of vying for those limited client dollars out there, which leads nicely into the second one, limited resources. Businesses, organizations, all of us have limited resources these days. So what that means to me from a marketing perspective is effectiveness and efficiency are vital, as well as setting yourself apart in some way and delivering a really good return on investment for either your investment, your clients' investments, that kind of thing. E-commerce and online presence, so we just lived through a pandemic where we couldn't see each other in person particularly well. So having that online presence, that way to interact with others in an online way became vital. So now that we're a little more back in person, don't forget it because that online presence is really important. I always call the website the great validator because really, in the end, are you a valid business? Are you in business and still offering your products or services? That's a great thing. If you happen to be able to offer e-commerce on your website, that's a great thing too. And your online presence isn't just your website. It could be social media. It could be mobile interaction, all these mobile devices that we're all using all the time. So it's thinking about those, elements of things as well. Let me jump to personalization and customer experience. One of the themes you'll kind of hear in what we're talking about today is really try to put yourself in your customer's shoes and understand why they're looking for your product or service, and try to understand from their perspective why they might be out there looking, and then how your solution solves that kind of problem. Everybody loves it to be customized, personalized, that you're thinking about the customer as much as possible. So that isn't anything new either, but something to keep in mind. And then finally, differentiation. So that's your secret sauce. That's what we're going to talk about a little bit more today. But this crowded market, limited resources, setting yourself apart is one of the most vital things you can do to grow your business. And we all have it. We all have a special sauce of some kind. And so we want to then highlight that as much as possible. And we'll talk a little bit about what are some ways you can use that special sauce once you have it. All right, so those are, some, not all trends, but some from a marketing perspective. Now, Susanne, what are you seeing?
Yes, absolutely. So in addition, how are we thinking about that community engagement piece as an essential to your business? Certainly, it's going to be a commitment to your values. We've heard a lot about values in the last couple of years coming through the pandemic. Those values are that your company's fundamental beliefs and principles that guide your organization. And the values are going to shape your business's culture and promote connection across your team members. And they also explain why your business does what it does. And this is going to help you differentiate your brand from other competitors. Sustainability. We're hearing this every day in the news. This is the environmental piece. Certainly, if you're a publicly traded company, the SEC has brought down new regulations. But this also is important for all of us, even as small businesses of one or two people. How are you thinking about sustainability in your business practice? And how does that differentiate you and kind of become part of your ethos? Employee engagement. Small businesses are also thinking about how do we show up for our employees. This could look like the new hybrid work environment, the remote work environment. What does that look like today? How do you think about using employee engagement to retain and hire new talent? And then this also is going to include kind of volunteerism and getting back into community. Younger generations are really asking for and looking for companies to tell them how are they going to be able to participate in other activities through charitable initiatives as well. And then, of course, what we're here for today, the local and community engagement. So supporting local businesses, fostering those connections across businesses. In fact, that's what we're doing here today through our chamber as a community connector. And finally, I would certainly say DEI is not a trend, it is a business imperative. The diversity, equity, and inclusion. And today, that commitment to diversity must be accessible, it must be sustainable, and it must be something that you are kind of living every day. If you missed it last week, there was a great chamber event, regaining DEI momentum. I believe, Maxim and Tracy, this is recorded and you can go back and watch it. I encourage you to do that.
Great.
So those are just some of the trends and we'll see them weaved in today. And I'm going to turn it back to Sarah now.
Okay, sounds good. I think these are all trends that many of us are seeing, many more out there as well. But that lays the groundwork. Now I'm going to, again, come to a marketing perspective here. And to me, the goal of marketing is to connect your business's value to the clients that need what you offer. So if we get down to brass tacks with that, that's what you're trying to do. There are some ways you can go about it. I feel very strongly there are 3 elements. We go to the next slide that come together to really lay the groundwork again for your marketing strategy. So the 3 elements are, number 1 is your market. So where are you in your market? Where do you want to be in your market? What does the competitive landscape look like? And are there other factors happening in your market? Is there a regulatory environment that you need to be aware of, an initiative, changes that are happening? We're all sort of in an economic environment that's a little uncertain. And so thinking about what that impact has on your market is that first important element, I would say. The second one is your ideal client, also known as your target market. So who is it that your products or services are going to serve the most and the most effectively? So many of us want to be all things. I remember starting out my own business saying, people would come to me, hey, can you do this? Can you do that? And I would want to say yes immediately because you want to get some clients, you want to get some revenue coming in the door. It is counterintuitive, but really tightly defining who that ideal client is really important. And it's okay to cut some ideal clients out if you stay in your lane, offer what you're really good at. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that, but that one is really important. As I think I said already, putting yourself in your client's shoes is a really important piece of this as well. Understanding what leads to the issue that they're having and why might they need the services or products that your company offers. So that's the second element. Third element, what we're talking about today, differentiators, that special sauce, that thing about or things about your company that nobody else has. So I think those are vital to then helping you figure out your messaging, your tactics that you want to use in marketing. If you can sort of get these 3 really strongly embedded within your company, your staff, and your strategy, your end results are going to be so much better, I think. Okay, moving on to the next question that I get a ton is, how can I get more people to buy my products, my services? That is such a great question and so many pieces to that question, but things I've already said, think like your ideal client. What problem are they having that you want to solve? Write it down, figuratively or literally. Think about it. Think about how they might come to the issue that they're having and how you can then help them solve it. The next one is identifying those ideal clients and coming up with these, potential personas for who clients are. What does that mean? That means thinking about characteristics. Who's the actual person who's making the decision? What, are they looking for? This can be on the personal side or the institutional side, meaning they live in an organization, have this particular role, here's who they report to, really kind of getting into a more granular level of who they are can be really helpful to you as well. Defining what sets your business apart and why clients would choose you. We talked about that too. Then pulling these elements into powerful, enticing messaging that you can then use in social media, on your website, in email marketing, in your one-to-one conversations with clients, at a conference where maybe you have the opportunity to speak, maybe you're attending, elevator pitch, all those kind of things. The message should tie back to these 3 items here. When you think about that ideal client, you want to think about where can you interact with them? Are there opportunities for you to hang out with them? And that could be at a professional association, a networking event, a Charles River Chamber type event. There's many different options where you can intersect with your client. And so you want to implement the tactics that are going to really speak to your ideal client. I end up talking with lots of people who feel like they have to do it all, right, in marketing, and it's exhausting. And especially if you run a small business, you can't do it all. You have only so much time you can devote to your marketing. And so really sort of prioritizing which tactics, meaning which actual marketing are you going to do that's going to intersect with your ideal client, that should be your highest priority from my perspective. Finally, one of the, it's sort of, of course, but if you deliver high quality services, really good products, whatever it is that you're really good at, deliver it. That is going to be the best marketing that you probably can do, because you then get word of mouth, you get referrals, you get happy clients who want to do more work with you. And so being able to do really good work is one of the best things you can do from how can I get more clients to buy perspective. All right, why don't we stop for a minute? Are there any questions people have? Anything in the chat? Anybody wants to sort of dig into in any way, or are we good and keep going? Okay. Excellent. I love it when there's no questions. That means I'm doing such a good job. All right, maybe not. I've just bored all of you to tears. Anyway, I do get very excited about marketing, as you may be aware. It's one of my passions.
How do we signal a question? Chat or just raise the hand? I'm driving.
Why don't you stick it in the chat, and that way we'll make sure we have a history of it as well. Okay.
So if you are someone who's driving, I can I'll drop it in the chat if it's for Sarah.
You put it in the chat.
That's great.
I can drop it in there.
Okay. What do you think about attending industry events from our good friend Colette? I think industry events is one of the greatest things you can do, especially if you can moderate, speak, or have some visibility of some kind, a booth, that type of thing. So what that does, number one, you're associated with that industry, sort of, whoever's putting that conference or event on. And number two, you're with others that now can see if you have a speaking role, that sort of sets you up as the expert. That's one of the things you really want to do. And that's priceless in so many ways. That's what we all want to do in marketing. But by virtue of being the speaker, you've now set yourself up as a subject matter expert too. So I think it's great. If you're just rubbing shoulders with others, also great. Visibility is great. I think very strongly that marketing is a lot like teaching. All of us don't learn the same way, right? And some people are auditory, some people are visual, some people need to touch it. I think marketing is very similar, and you try different tactics to see what is going to kind of stick with your target market as much as possible. So I highly recommend industry events.
Got another question in here from Erica, who we know well at Perch. When we dig into the details of delivering, I would want to know more about your recommendations about follow-up and garnering testimonials. What point do you ask in the process of your journey with a client as a service provider?
So great question, Erica. Thank you so much. Always nice to see a good friend in the audience. So testimonials, I think, are really helpful because it's a real client, right, or customer, talking about their experience with you, and you're not making it up. Somebody else is actually saying it. So highly recommend it. Sort of the natural process when you're working with a client is not necessarily to ask for it at the beginning, right? They haven't gotten any of your services or products at that particular time. So more of a natural evolution is sort of at the end. You also want to make sure they're happy, right? And so there can be, a point at which you're almost done and you could ask for the testimonial before you actually finish up. I find that's a subtle nuance kind of thing and hard to do because you're also intent on delivery. So sometimes a little hard to do right then. Maybe it's part of your ending with the client process. To me, that's a very natural part. And that's when I ask is when I've sort of delivered what I want to, we are talking about next steps. And then I can say, you know what, I loved working with you. I'd love it if it was possible, if you're open to it, would you give me a testimonial? I would love to do that. And you do it in whichever sort of method works best. Maybe they send it to you via email. Maybe it's a LinkedIn recommendation. Maybe it's a Google, on Google. You figure out what's most effective for your business. But I think it's a great thing to ask for. So, and good question.
Great question. Thanks, Erica. It's something I need to remember to do as well. So good reminder. Rob Stegman has asked, what strategies do you suggest to research that actual ideal client?
So there's some great tools out there. We absolutely can pay for some really good tools. LinkedIn Sales Navigator has some great ones. I tend to do a lot of work in the professional services world. And so my, LinkedIn Sales Navigator is a great tool. It's not the only one. There's plenty of other tools out there too. So my recommendation here, and I'm more than happy to talk with people on separate from this about how to go about that process. I have a worksheet too that I'd be happy to send to people about how do you figure out that ideal client? What are the kinds of questions you want to ask yourself? But there's things like, okay, what type of company is it? If you're a B2B type of company, how big? Where does your service or product fit into their business cycle? How does it fit into the budgeting? That's a really important piece. How does decision making happen in the organization? What do you know about it? If you don't know, people are open to informational interviews, are open to, hey, you're really, strong in this particular industry. Could I meet with you for 15 minutes? A lot of people are so open to that. And don't forget, they may end up being a great client in the end, but they also just could help you get some industry information. And that may help you think about other avenues to go out there. Susanne, any thoughts on sort of other ways to find ideal client decision maker?
Yeah, and I also find, I know I'm my business, I'm providing a service of my consulting services. So that's a little unique as well. And it really does come from also being out, as we talked about earlier, Sarah, in community, getting out to those events and understanding and listening. That's one of my own values, but hearing what are the challenges that are happening, and then how does that kind of narrate a lens into what is an ideal customer and how can I help? Okay. It's kind of a little different take on depending on business type.
Right, exactly. Zoom Info, another tool, absolutely. I think, some are better quality than others, and I don't have a strong feeling either way about Zoom Info. If you're finding what you need from a particular tool, fantastic. If you don't have to pay for it, that is also wonderful, but sometimes you do get what you pay for. I'm not a huge fan of buying lists because I think the minute they publish them, they're out of date and there's so much movement in industries. So I'd rather personally, I feel very strongly that marketing is about relationship building also. And so I'd rather see companies build relationships with folks either that have shown an interest or that they know are, sort of along the cycle in terms of your sales, than going out there and buying a list. So personal preference there. Okay.
I know I'm going to have us keep going. I know there's a few more. But
right. I'm with you. Exactly. All right. So now we're going to get into that secret sauce piece of it. And so what sets your business apart? A little bit of what some of the questions were about too, but if you can kind of keep going through these, Susanne. So here are some elements you might want to consider when you're thinking about what sets your business apart. Quality. So are you an incredibly high quality? Let's hope. But the quality of what you're offering might be something that you can hang your hat on as a differentiator. As we move along here, your target market, the people and companies that you're targeting might be a differentiator, just because maybe you're the only one providing that type of service or product to that target market, or you understand that target market really well. Maybe you came from that target market. There's all sorts of subtle nuances there about the target market. Specialization. So whatever it is you're providing, if you're very specialized about what you offer, that may be a differentiator as well. Geography can be another one that is really useful. Maybe you offer it, your products and services to a particular neighborhood. Maybe it's to a geographic region. Maybe it's a state. Maybe you're international. There could be anything, but geography is an element to consider, I would say, as you go along. Customer service. So are you really, really good at customer service? I have a couple examples a little bit later on, and there's one that I think that has incredibly good customer service. So that's another thing to think about. The people that you have, their skill sets, maybe they're unique, different, very specialized, maybe they're broad and they're generalists and they can help all sorts of different people. That's one of the things to think about as well. And finally, price. That's a big one too. Are you a low-cost provider? That's important. What if you have a high price? One of the things I often work with my clients on is saying, so, okay, the price may be high, but the value that you're offering your clients is something nobody else offers. And so there's ways you can deal with, hey, I'm a higher priced provider in a market, but that's okay. You just need to reinforce it really well. So this isn't the end all and be all. Many different elements that you can sort of figure out your differentiators. Then, so put a list together. Think about it, brainstorm, talk with other people about why they choose you, talk with your clients. That's a fantastic way to find things out. Okay, so you've got a list. This is great. I've got my differentiators. It's a list of 10. All right, that's a lot. Now, ask yourself some questions. Can your competition claim the exact same thing? And if they can, it's actually not a differentiator. It may be important and it may be a paramount of value. It may be just something about your company. But if your competition can claim exactly the same thing, then it's not a differentiator. But maybe you want to dig a little deeper about that and figure something out there. Is it important to your client? This is actually really important, because if your differentiator is this very specific technical thing that your client doesn't actually care about, not a great differentiator, unfortunately. But again, maybe digging a little deeper around that and what it allows your client to do in the end might be the differentiator. Is it true? I feel very strongly it should be. I think it is really important to do true marketing and use, sort of truth and being very forthright about exactly what you offer is very important. Can you prove or quantify your differentiators? That's a really important element as well, because that you can use in some of your tactics, your social media. Maybe you create an infographic, all sorts of different things you can do here. I'll give you a little example from the company I used to work with. We were rebranding. We went through a process, had an outside consultant come in and work with us, and went out and talked to probably 30 of our clients. Came back to us with results from that. Here's the great news. Your clients, every single one of them said you were smart. And so we're patting ourselves on the back. This is great. This will definitely end up in our tagline. We're so great. And the next thing they said was, but that's not a differentiator, because every one of your competitors can say the exact same thing. it's qualitative, right? It's not a thing that you can sort of use as a differentiator. So we had to go back to the drawing board a little bit and found out that one of the important elements of this company was our what we stood behind our word. There was a whole lot of baiting and switching going on in the industry, and we were never did that. The people we proposed always did the work. And so we ended up with a tagline, happened to be in the transportation world, transportation leadership that you can trust. Nothing smart in that one, but really important that we went back and did that work. So just thought I'd give you an example there of what you can do when you're digging a little bit deeper there. So you're saying to yourself, should I differentiate? I don't know. Is it really going to do much for me? So if you need a little social proof here, I went back to a McKinsey survey, McKinsey being one of the leading management consulting firms out there. They do a lot of research. They go out there and they talk to a lot of businesses. And these just happen to sort of speak to me about sort of differentiation in general. So what does this top one say? Half of companies use their differentiators in their marketing. Half say their strategies are just playing along with everybody else, just doing what everybody else does. Combining it with the bottom quote, companies that pay more attention to differentiation will have market-beating results and see substantial ROI. Does that mean you will? I certainly hope so. I cannot promise you market-beating results. However, I will say, if you have more of a focus on your differentiators in your marketing, it's going to help you with your customers and increasing your revenue and growing your business. So that said, I have a couple of sort of examples of brands that I think differentiate well, big ones. So they're just kind of that most people would know. If you know of any brands that differentiate really well, stick it in the chat. We'd love to kind of hear it. So let me give you a quick little so LL Bean. Kind of, they're in their lane, right? They have a very specific market. They be an outsider. That's one of the things. They're built on the idea that they want people to get outside and they want to give them sort of the tools and the clothing that they're going to need to be outside in any weather. One of the hallmarks of LL Bean, and has been for many, many years, they don't do this, I don't think as much, they don't do this 100% anymore. They had 100% money back guarantee. Anything happened to an LL Bean product and they would replace it, no questions asked. And they did this for years and years. And unfortunately, I think maybe some people might have abused it. And so they couldn't continue to offer it, no questions asked, but they still stand behind it. They have really high quality. They stay in their lane. They know exactly what they're doing. They're not trying to be trendy. They're not trying to be fashion conscious in any way, and they know it. But they are providing incredibly good quality, products out in the market. So to me, that's a big differentiator. Nike is a really important one too. I think we all know about Nike. They wanted to set the standard in athletic wear. They had sort of a very high quality, but limited product line. So athletic shoes, workout clothes, and few additional products when they started out. And they wanted to give athletes the equipment they needed to succeed. If any of you, Susanne brought this up, have seen Air, which I have not yet, one of the interesting sort of partnerships with famous athletes, the Air Jordan was one of the first times they partnered an athlete with a product specifically named and saw incredible results. And so this is a brand that often stands behind, what they sort of put out there in many ways. And then finally, Apple, one that many of us know, such an interesting history. If you ever sort of watch what happened over time, Steve Jobs, in, out, there was a lot going on there. But Apple, what do? Offer a small number of products, focus kind of on the high end. They give priority to profits over market share. But isn't it interesting that market share follows in many ways? And one of the things they're trying to do is create, through innovation, a halo effect that make people excited about the next product. They have launches, every year, everyone's eager, excited, standing outside in line at the Apple Store for the newest product. So some great brands that you can like them or not like them, they sure do sort of differentiate very well and very clearly, I would say. All right. Any companies that people think have really good differentiation that they want to talk about? Feel free, but if you don't, that's fine too.
We have agreement on the LLVs.
Excellent. I love that. Okay. Sounds good. Well, let's we'll go to the next part here. All right. Got my differentiators. Now what do I do with them? All right. Use the differentiators in your messaging whenever you're out there talking, how you're portraying yourself in the market. There, you could develop a marketing campaign focused on each differentiator. And what's a campaign? So you could do it in many different ways, but what you're trying to do is get information out to your target market about something that sets you apart. You could do this via email. You could do this via social media. You could do this on your website, your blog, all sorts of different things. I'm a very big believer that the website is the core of your marketing, and you use other tactics around it, like email marketing, like social media marketing, like in person, like conferences, to all drive people to that core, which is the website. So keep that differentiators front and center on your website. Make sure it's in your keywords on your website. Search engine optimization can pick up on things like that. Talk about your differentiators in your sales pitches, your calls, your just interactions when you introduce yourself at a networking event. We talked about testimonials. Make sure you can ask, you can say, hey, would you give me a testimonial and talk about, X? Feel free. They can always say no. But, you're trying to guide them a little bit to say, was this important in why you enjoyed working with me? That's an important one. Mention it on social media. That's a great one too. And finally, think about how you're showing up in your community. And that may be, number one, a differentiator. And it also may be part of your values. It may be really important to you about showing up in the Charles River Chamber community and other communities. And that can be something that is different about you that others don't have. So that said,
we'll connect through to that community engagement.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to look at these quickly and then?
Oh, sure. Yep.
Yeah.
So I don't want to get too far off. I worked with a couple clients, just wanted to show you some examples of using differentiators in action. Cafe Juice Up is a juice cafe, obviously, in Mattapan. It's an area that doesn't have a lot of healthy food choices. And so I happened to work with them through a contract with the city of Boston. And what was really important in their differentiating was the idea they have healthy options. They used words like healthy, clean ingredients, quality, affordable meals, healthy living, nutritious, and they highlighted them front and center in their website. This is my happy place. That was something that a client actually said. A customer came in and said, this is my happy place. So we wanted to put it on that website and get it out there. All right, so that's one example. Another example is a company I work with, I've been working with for many years. It's an engineering firm in the transportation field, do a lot of public sector, but also private sector work. And one of their differentiators is that they have a public engagement, a community engagement group. And many other engineering firms don't have that. So what we wanted to do was highlight the fact that this is an in-house resource. So we can keep that continuity of the important elements of the project going with the community engagement. A lot of times there are firms that specialize in it that need to be brought in, and you can lose some of that continuity. So what we did, exactly as I was mentioning, website was the core, and used a number of different tactics to drive people to the website. Email marketing campaigns, a huge element of their marketing, as well as social media, and talking about, at the time, virtual public meetings were new because they hadn't done them before. They all had to be in person, and then they became overnight something that people did all virtually. And that's one of the ways we were able to differentiate Howard Stein Hudson from many other firms. And there's so many examples of how you can do that. So now we've sort of looked at the marketing lens of this, and I'll hand it off to Susanne to talk a little bit more about from the community impact lens.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. And so we, Sarah and I both believe that some of those differentiators you're really going to find in thinking about who are you and what is your community engagement strategy, whether you're a single owner business or a larger business. Understanding your role in community is really going to help set you apart and really be something you want to talk about and share in your marketing strategy. Let's start with first, what do we mean by community? So, of course, community is going to be all of the individuals that are in the area in which your business operates, where you're located, but it's more than just those individuals. Your community is also your employees, your suppliers, your consumers and customers. If you're a nonprofit organization, all of your donors, your volunteers, the recipients of your mission. You'll often hear this term stakeholders. So that is who we mean when we're thinking about community engagement. It's important to know everyone who's in your community. Because you're going to want to make sure you are speaking when you are doing that marketing storytelling. Are you speaking to everyone in the community and telling that story authentically in a way that everyone will kind of understand? We encourage you kind of after this to, as we're saying, jot down all of these ideas and be sure you kind of have your list of, as well, who's in your community, what are your differentiators, and who's in your community. And then as we're kind of thinking about how do you determine what is kind of your community engagement strategy, it really does tie back to something you're probably hearing about and reading about in the news, this corporate social responsibility. That is an important piece. In its early days, corporate social responsibility was often very transactional and not necessarily connected back to your secret sauce or purpose as a business. Businesses, don't get me wrong, businesses were doing many good things and making charitable contributions, but there's a way that you can do it that is also emanating what you already do well as a business. We can all think about this as well. Certainly those big brands we just talked about, Apple and Nike, they have budgets to have a big corporate social responsibility strategy. But every one of us as a small business can also be thinking about these elements. What's our ethical responsibility to ensuring fairness in our operations? What's our environmental responsibility? That's going back to that sustainability trend. Social responsibility, that's where the community really shows up. How are we making sure the world and the society is how are we helping solving on the world's social issues? And then your economic responsibility. This is about, yes, we are all kind of in business for profit, but you can also have a commitment to doing good through that profit that you're seeking. And the next piece, as you're kind of thinking about how do I tie and weave back in my secret sauce and my purpose, is really understanding what do we mean by that purpose? That purpose tells you, what is my company's core reason for being? If I didn't exist tomorrow, would somebody else just be able to replace my business? what's that muscle, that strength that we are exercising that makes us unique as a business? You know, I know there's a lot of, I see some friends here on this webinar. Thank you for joining us. I'm thinking about, for example, if you are a coach, a career coach, but your lived experience, what did you do before becoming a coach? Perhaps it was a pivot. And all of that experience in one sector is something that is your secret sauce that you can bring to those conversations as a coach, for example. And then once you have kind of that purpose defined, if you were setting up kind of and thinking about those 4 elements of corporate social responsibility, you're looking at it through the lens of your purpose. What's material to my business, and how am I going to set about a strategy that speaks to my purpose? And you've got kind of those stakeholders out there looking in at this, your clients and your customers, investors, employees, and community members where your business operates. That community engagement is beneficial for your business, for customers, and the community. So we wanted to kind of go back, now that you've got that thinking through of the lens of additional corporate social responsibility and community engagement. How about we look at a few brands that are differentiating through purpose? And we welcome also, again, adding in if you have others to share here. And a couple I wanted to highlight. 7th generation. So at 7th generation, they're really born with the purpose of making sure that from a deliberate point, they must consider the impact on the next 7 generations. So for every environmental product that they're creating, is this going to have an impact 7 generations from now? We won't be here, but that is how they are operating. And it's really interesting to really think through, how did that name come about? Panera Bread has local ties here to the Newton and Needham community. And in their purpose is baked into their brand as they have it. But they are, what is it? They're saying they're only willing to serve food that they would be willing to share with their families as the leaders and employees. And they also kind of tell us what is their carbon footprint with all of the different products and food elements that go into each item we might purchase at Panera. They're telling us, where did it come from? What was its environmental footprint? And they also really think about, they have 100,000 employees. So that community of employees, those stakeholders, how are they making sure that they provide educational opportunities for those employees for growth, whether it's within Panera or outside and beyond? And then finally, I think we all know Patagonia, that this has been baked into they are making products that have a purpose to help solve on major carbon footprints in our world. Were there any others that people can think of, whether maybe it's a local company in our community that are differentiating through that purpose lens? Sarah, any that come to that you were thinking of?
One of our folks on the call was talking about her secret sauce and the Colette effect. Thank you, Colette. But it's so true. And that's not necessarily focused on something like 7th generation or Panera, but that core sort of living your values, I think, is incredibly important to a number of companies and being able to give back. And so many companies are doing that. Absolutely.
Great. Okay. Oop. My cursor is not forwarding. Okay. Yeah. So how do we think about doing developing your community engagement strategy, and how does it tie back to that overall marketing initiative? So you want to make sure, one of the homework assignments we'll have for you is go back and really make sure, do you have your understanding of what is your purpose? What are your values as a company? Have you identified who is in your community? And then can you think about what sustainable partnerships might look like across organizations. And remember, this can be more than a philanthropic gift. There's a lot more that we can do in community together to have kind of that community engagement. And then there are opportunities. We like to talk about this in the work that I do with corporate clients, as well as with nonprofit organizations. And how do you think about putting all of your capital to work? And what do I mean by when I say your capital? So you certainly, of course, have your financial capital. If you have some extra dollars, is there a place that you can give back? But you also have your reputational capital. Who are you as a business? Are you trusted? Who are you connected with? And how can that help others in the community if you were to raise their voices? Your human capital. Your employees are certainly opportunities to be out in community and supporting initiatives. And then your social capital. One of the interesting pieces, I was just listening to another on a podcast, but that Generation X is really thinking about, Gen Z is really thinking about more than a gift, but how can we advance through our own social capital? They're willing to tell the story for organizations that they believe in. So using that, and that social could be out on social media as influencers that we're seeing more and more, or even in conversation.
We had a couple of great thoughts in the chat. Heidi was sharing one way she ties her purpose to helping the community is to volunteer and help people who might not have the resources to hire a career coach through a career center in her community. I think the pro bono piece is fantastic, and especially if you feel strongly about it. And then Erica was saying she's about to choose some client gifts, and she's going to do it through a local women-owned company that sources sustainable ingredients. Great, also, way to kind of live it and talk the talk and walk the walk at the same time.
Absolutely, yes. And remember, we can, if you're looking for nonprofits in our community, log into the chamber and use the directory so we can find who are the chamber members who are in our community through this very resource today. So again, we're going back to McKinsey, who's got a lot of great studies on why this is important, why we can kind of back it up by research. Businesses that orient towards a long-term, purpose-driven strategy are outperforming their peers. So baking this into your business, small, medium, large, this is really going to have long-term results. It's really good for, as we said, employee retention and hiring practices. It's going to help you cultivate that customer trust. Once you have kind of that community ethos in the way that you're talking about your purpose and your secret sauce, those customers are going to come back to you. That also goes to the earlier questions of when you're looking for testimonials, that trust is evident when somebody is willing to give you that testimonial and really be partnered then with you in your brand. That community engagement strategy helps create a positive workplace culture. And finally, as we just shared, it is good for your bottom line. Having a purpose strategy is going to help you get that ROI. So building off those great ideas from Erica and Heidi, and I know Heidi just offered a free webinar online on LinkedIn, for example. That was such a great idea when you're thinking about also that opportunity to divide of who doesn't have access to some of these services that we offer. You might be hearing this skills-based volunteering as well. What your secret sauce may be, for example, you're a website content developer and you have a unique lens into it. Nonprofits would love to have your employees help with their websites. They don't have as much of the budget to really put towards website development. So that's a great way if there aren't a lot of additional dollars, but you're thinking about community engagement, how to get your team, yourself out there to connect with other organizations. We talked about sponsorships, sponsoring organizations and our opportunities to share your brand and your differentiator with an organization that is connected back to you, that you believe in and you want to demonstrate your commitment to. And then finally, really go back and make sure your mission statement, your values, and your DEI statements are published, that they're accessible, and that they're living in your day-to-day culture across your teams. Any other, I think I can pause here to see, do we have any other questions or ideas in the chat that we missed, Sarah?
No, I think we got the most of them. So I think we are good. We want to be cognizant of people's time as well.
I know I saw one out there though, and I'm not sure if Smaranda, are you still here? I know you had a question from the car.
Oh, right. Wait. She may not be.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, let's keep going. If I can get back to there. Okay.
All right. So now we're at that point. Want to make sure, tell you what we told you. So secret sauce, it permeates everything. And it's also where you start. And that may be what you want to build upon if you're thinking from a marketing strategy perspective or a community engagement perspective.
Yep. And then we really challenge you and your company to really dig deep and go back and think through, have we put to paper, do we know what that secret sauce is? And look to others, look to your peers and your accountability partners, share back if you haven't written down something new and you want to test it out, use the community to see, is this the direction? Am I saying something unique? I was thinking about the question might come, how do I do this if I'm just that small business of one? But you have that place as well to really think through your purpose and what makes you unique.
And that, company of one or small business, to me, what that says is it's really important to prioritize too. Limited resources, back to that. There's only so much time and you only have so much time. So prioritize what you're going to do and be consistent about it. So you don't have to be everywhere, but if you can start with that purpose, that secret sauce, think about your values and do some activities that reinforce them, that's going to be so much more effective than trying to do all the social media on every platform that there is. And marketing is not only external. Think about, as Susanne was talking about, stakeholders. There are lots of different folks, people in the community, people who are employees. So many people are vying for employees these days, trying to bring more people into their organization. Think about them as your audience as well. And that's a piece of your marketing and thinking through your secret sauce a bit too. So if you only walk away with 3 things, we'd love it if you could do that. Hopefully you got more than that out of this. If you, Susanne, go to the next one, it's just, feel free to get in touch with us. More than happy to chat with people. And the next slide should be able to show you how to get in touch with us, maybe. There we go. There we go. Feel free to connect with us. We'd be happy to chat with you. I know we are almost at time. Are there any questions people want to put out there before we all have to go?
I see one here.
I have a question too.
Yeah, okay.
So one of the things I put in the chat, which was interesting, I just wanted to learn the origin of 7th generation. And I saw that it was from Iroquois philosophy. So that was interesting. I didn't know that. But one of the things, just even Googling, I saw that 7th generation has had some lawsuit issues related to its marketing. And so one of the things I wondered about is, do you have thoughts about how to bounce back when you're in that kind of crisis communications? Like, do you have a marketing, what is your perspective on how do you repair? And I should have put that question. I should have put that question in my comment, and I had it in my head and I didn't put it in I didn't explain, that's why I put that in there. So my question was, how do you bounce back when you're in a marketing situation that is damaging?
Yeah, well, I can kind of start and then connect back to Sarah, but in terms of that piece, you're certainly kind of raising an element of making sure if what you're doing, it has to be authentic. So there's lots of concerns about kind of the greenwashing piece of are we saying as a company that we're doing things, but we're not actually carrying through on that mission. If you can then come forward and demonstrate through data and resources, that's going to be key to showing this is how we're doing it as one way to bounce back. I think another thing that's coming to light right now, there's a lot of, and seventh generation is a good example because they're kind of, the way they started is thinking about environmentally safe products. There's also this thought of maybe not every single element of your environmental strategy is going to necessarily help you with that profit. And that just has to be something that, especially on a bigger company, that you're comfortable with, that you still need to do it to be ethical and do a good business, but it might not always be connected to saying that's going to get us profit too.
Yeah.
In fact, there's a kind of a piece coming out just this week, I think in the Harvard Business Review, talking about that chief sustainability officer role and what it means from a bigger company perspective. Great questions, Rachel. I don't know, Sarah, if you want to first tie it back to the marketing piece.
Absolutely. I would say there are, firms that specialize in crisis communication. So it's an important thing to do. I also would say, I think we've all seen scenarios where companies may be in a crisis type of scenario, maybe some negative PR about them, and ignoring it or trying to sweep it under the rug has not worked well for many. And so I think you get together, you figure out how to address it in some way. You may be in a lawsuit environment and you can't, but at least have the conversation about it. And I think, we've seen sort of the CEO fall on the sword and say, we made a mistake. I think a lot of people have respect for, hey, owning up to being authentic about the idea that we did something wrong. And, here are the steps we're taking to try and fix it. Not the answer to everything, but there are, some good scenarios where, hey, at least they were authentic and, owned up to it, I think can be very positive.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Sarah and Suzanne. I'll send the recording to everyone, including the slides. But have a wonderful rest of your day, everybody.
Great. Thanks so much for attending. We loved it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye.